Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. Chances are that many, if not most of us, are going to put on a few pounds during the holiday season thanks to the increased opportunities to eat, drink, and be merry. When it's over, we'll be looking for ways to lose weight and make pledges to do so. It's just as likely that we won't follow through. Many will go into the season already overweight, some seriously so. I'm Don Marsh. Today we're talking about another approach to shedding pounds. Charles D'Angelo is a local weight loss coach who is getting a lot of buzz because of his strategy. His book, Think and Grow Thin, will be out in just a couple of weeks. His premise is that how we think about food is just as important as what we eat. It worked for him. He lost 160 pounds and has worked with celebrities, politicians, and just plain folks with very impressive results. Charles, it's great to have you in the studio.
Don, it's an honor to be here, sir. I'm like with the Charlie Rose of St. Louis.
Not quite, but thank you for that. I wish people were here to see you. You look in such terrific shape. You're a walking advertisement for what you do.
Well, thank you, sir.
You know, I'd like to certainly get into your story, but let me begin by asking, you say that some people have eaten themselves into a prison from which they can't return. You call it emotional bondage. What do you mean by that?
Well, I've been there. In other words, when a person comes to see me, oftentimes they're very, very cynical because they've tried and tried and tried and tried again to lose weight without any lasting result. They may have temporary success. That is, they lose a little bit of weight. They start to become comfortable wherever they are at that point. They let their old patterns set in, and the next thing they know, they're eating the wrong foods again, and they've dropped out of exercise, and they're right back to where they started, or in fact, they're higher. And this up and down creates a lot of emotional volatility in the sense that it creates a lot of doubt in a person. If a person can't take control of their own health, in other words, if they feel that's external to them, it's very difficult for them to feel that they can take control of other facets of their life, whether it be their business success, whether it be their personal relationships. So it's something that is a thread amongst a person's entire lifespan, in my opinion, in that by mastering the way that they discipline themselves with their health and by taking control of their habits in that regard, they free themselves from this prison. The prison is one of loneliness, one of despair, one where a person feels that they're inundated with so much conflicting evidence as far as what's good to eat, what's not good to eat. If I do this, this is going to work. If I do that, that's not going to work. They just feel totally mixed up and confused. They feel stuck in a place they hate. And I was there as a teenager weighing 360 pounds, a size 50-inch waist. I didn't see a through way. Well, that wasn't until I had quite an epiphany a little bit later.
You say you couldn't see a through way. There's something I read about you lying on the couch sucking a 50-ounce Coke or something like that, and you couldn't see the television set over your stomach.
Well, it was really, really upsetting. I was just 17 years old, and I grew up in a family where my father was a blue-collar worker, owned an industrial cleaning company, very hardworking man.
All here in St. Louis, by the way.
All here in St. Louis, and my father still owns the company. My mother, she was a stay-at-home mother. My father's family all dealt with obesity and its comorbidities, diabetes, hypertension, all the related illnesses that come alongside being overweight. So many people deal with those today. And I saw a lot of that future ahead of me if I wasn't to change. But much like anything else, until a person really makes their personal decision to change, it doesn't matter what anyone tells them. You can have your brother, your sister, your mother, your wife tell you to change. But until you make it click and you really realize that it's something you have to do, that it's not a should, but you have to do it, the change doesn't happen. So at 17, I was laying down on the couch at night after scarfing down an entire pizza by myself, a box of Pizza Hut breadsticks, which were salt-covered and spaghetti sauce laden, and a 2-liter of regular soda. So I probably consumed over 1,000 calories in that one sitting. I was 360 pounds. My heart was racing for no reason. I woke up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, and I went to change the television station with the remote control, and I looked for it, and it wasn't quite blindness, but it was totally blurred. It's like, imagine when you first wake up and you rub your eyes, and you're trying to clear up your eyesight so you can see, but it didn't go away, no matter how much I rubbed my eyes, and it scared the heck out of me. That next day, I woke up, and my eyesight had returned. I had fallen back to sleep that night prior, and I figured, like any other kid, well, it must be something temporary. Well, that next day in school, I went to CBC here in St. Louis, and I was sitting in an air-conditioned classroom, and I started sweating profusely, so much so that as I was looking down at my exam that I was taking, sweat droplets were hitting the ink on the test, and I noticed what's going on with me. And I felt again, my heart was racing, my hands were cold but sweaty at the same time. And I realized I had to change. I didn't think I would live to see my high school graduation at that point. So my health was one factor that really, really set into me that I had to change. My grandmother suffered from diabetes. My grandfather suffered from diabetes and hypertension. They were both overweight. And I certainly didn't want my future, the potential, the things, the gifts that God had given me to be hindered by my habits.
You know, something you said a moment ago about you have to decide. You have to make that decision. I had this conversation with someone the other day about smoking and basically said, you're not going to give up smoking until that moment when you decide that you really want to give up. It's the same thing.
You're exactly right. With any addictive behavior, I believe that there's all sorts of strategies for how to change your weight. But I think if you come at it to try to lose weight, you're not going to get to where you need to go. I think that you need to come at it as, I want to improve the quality of my health. And weight loss is a byproduct of improving your overall health. And I found that when I made that decision that I was no longer going to settle for anything less than my best, that I was going to raise the standards on my life, I was going to start exercising, I was going to start eating right, and I was going to start contributing in the way that God intended I would, I decided at that point that I no longer could do things out of convenience, that I would have to be planful, much like achieving success in other dimensions. You can't expect to just be spontaneous and be successful. When you come on your radio show here, you come and you have an idea of what you're going to talk about. And as you've been doing this a long time, you can be more relaxed about it. But there's a structure, there's a framework that you work within. And that goes for this as well. So what I teach people to do is to develop that third leg of the stool. I always say it's kind of like a three-legged stool, my approach. You have the diet as one leg, which I tell a person exactly what they're going to eat, when they're going to eat, how much they're going to eat, so that they don't have to worry about overthinking about it, where they don't know if what they're doing is right or wrong. I'm going to give them a surefire way to get the weight off. I also tell them what to do with the exercise. So those two legs independently are vital, but without the third leg, the stool collapses. And that third leg is what's been missing in everything else that's out there, and that's the mindset. Much like smoking, you can go and do this program or read this book, but until you learn how to master your own mind, how to disconnect, and then with food, eventually reconnect and integrate a lot of healthy variety and learn how to not let the food control you. Food is not meant to be your life. It's meant to fuel your life. So the key is learn how to master yourself so that that's a reality.
So I want to be sure that everyone understands this, because you know very well, as we all do, that probably more books are written about diet than
nutrition and exercise
and all
science.
The rest of it.
Sure.
What differentiates you from the others? They all tell you, you should eat healthy and get plenty of exercise. You take it to that step of mindset. I think thinking it out.
I agree that eating right is extraordinarily important. And in my book, I go into great detail about proper nutrition, about proper exercise, because without those two legs of the stool is going to collapse. But I think that the glue, as I say, that holds it all together, and without that third piece, and that's what's been missing in everything that's out there, is how do you condition yourself so that despite whatever's going on in your personal life, so that if you lose a loved one, if you have a change of job, in the current economic uncertainty, that you don't turn towards food any longer to fill the void, to get certainty. And so many people right now, considering the economic climate of today, are looking for certainty. And one thing as a child that I used to get that certainty was food. I grew up in an environment where, unfortunately, my mother's side, while not overweight, they struggle with addiction in and of themselves. My mother struggled with alcoholism and prescription drug addiction. She loving source as a child for me, the best mom I could ever ask for. But as I grew older, to about 11, 12 years old, her past, growing up in an abusive environment, started to haunt her, and she turned to alcohol and prescription drugs to fill that void. So it's all the same. People use different quote-unquote drugs to fill the void. The key is, how do you disconnect from that? How do you find it within yourself? How do you get to the place where you surrender yourself over to doing what you know is right instead of what is easy?
Of course, an addictive personality is something that is real. And
in what way do you mean?
People do have addictive personalities. I mean, I think people who drink too much, they probably do other things in excess as well. Uh-huh. Putting that aside, that has got to be very, very difficult to sustain over a long period of time. That is getting beyond that and actually eliminating it entirely.
Well, when a person comes to see me, oftentimes they're out of balance. And what happens is they're either overcompensating, they're overeating with more exercise than they should be doing, or they're overeating and underexercising. In other words, the balance is off. The key is restoring the balance. So how do you get to a place where you go through a full day and you're not hungry? How do you get to a place where at least 5 days a week you've scheduled exercise and made it as important as a meeting in your day? That it's not something that's an option, but rather it's a necessity. And it's something that you actually enjoy. That's the real key, Don, is learning how to find these things pleasurable. When you cite the folks that I've helped that have lost 50, 100, 200 pounds, 250 pounds, these people haven't done it through just sheer hard willingness. They have really, really stayed focused, but more importantly, they've learned how to make what is required something they enjoy. And the key is learning how to make the pattern that you choose to take. In my book, I go through my exact methodology to achieve that type of consistency. How do you make it something that you actually look forward to and that you find it rewarding, more so than the negative that you used to use to fill the void?
You, in the book, you have a large segment on the exercise. But you're in a gym, you have sophisticated equipment, and most people don't have that or even access to it, particularly, as you mentioned, in today's economy. It can be expensive to go.
Certainly can.
What sort of exercises can we do to meet your objectives and criteria without having to go through that expensive routine?
Sure. In my book, Think and Grow Thin, what I do is I outline a specific 2-week by 2-week plan. So both with the foods, I tell a person for 2 weeks, here's what you're going to eat. Now, you have to understand, before I get to the exercise, I want to preface that with the food program is very, very structured. So what happens is a person will know exactly what time they're going to eat, what food they're going to eat, and within that framework, I give a couple options because there's not a one-size-fits-all. Some people might have allergies. Some people might not like one of the choices I give. So I give 3 to 5 options at the meal. But once a person decides on an option, and any of the clients I work with in my personal office, they select an option and they stick with it. With the exercise, it's the same thing, but it's far less complicated in the sense that all they're doing is walking. There is a resistance training exercise routine in there, exactly what I would tell a person to do if I was to help them lift weights. It's what I do. But that's not by any means mandatory initially. If a person has 50 pounds to lose and hasn't been working out and has no activity in their life right now, it can seem rather daunting to walk through a gym, much less get on a piece of exercise equipment. I know the last thing I wanted to do when I was 360 pounds was walk into a gym. So when I wrote my book, I thought to myself, if I was talking to me as a 17-year-old kid that's 360 pounds, what would I need to hear to make the difference? What would I need to say to this person, to this 360-pound person, to make that person make the connection that, number one, it's possible to change, and to get them to believe enough in themselves that they can?
So what would you say?
I would say this. Number one, don't ever give up hope no matter how many times you've tried, because I have person after person that comes to my office, and they're highly cynical. I have people that come in and they ask, well, what can your program do for me? And I say, absolutely nothing unless you're going to make this a priority. It's no different than anything else in life. You will get out of of my program what you put into it, in the sense that you've got to find within yourself the discipline, the focus, the stick-to-itness, okay, to make this something that you enjoy. Now, it's very easy after you do the first week or so, because you start to see the changes. You start to feel the changes. Your body restores its harmony. Your energy is better. Your clothes are fitting looser. All of your relatives are telling you how much different you look. Everything is different so quickly. But that first day or two, it's going to feel brand new. It's like jumping into a swimming pool. You're standing there, it's 110 degrees outside, it's sweltering hot, and all your buddies are in the swimming pool swimming, and they're saying what great time they're having. And you're standing out there and you dip your toe in, and it's ice cold. Well, you're going to have a little bit of reservation when you feel that. You just have to take the plunge. You've got to run up to the edge, jump, get into the water. When you first jump into the water, it's going to be a little cold, naturally, but your body adjusts to it. And sooner than you know it, you don't want to get out of the swimming pool. But you always have the choice to get out of the swimming pool if you want to. The key is learning how to enjoy that jump. Learning how to, once you're in the pool, have a good time. and feel comfortable and confident. So what I would say to a person is this: no matter how many times you've tried, you're sitting there listening to this right now, and you've tried every program out there. You don't know what to eat, when to eat, or you find so much conflicting data that you just don't know what to do. I've simplified it. This isn't rocket science. You don't need to have all these outlandish tests run and do all sorts of things to try to figure out what's right for you. Healthy eating is not rocket science, but what is rocket science is how do you learn to enjoy it so that when challenges arise in your life, you don't turn to the thing you used to cope with. And that's what I teach in my book, Think and Grow Thin.
Well, folks, what do you think? My guest is Charles D'Angelo. He is the author of that book, Think and Grow Thin, subtitled The Revolutionary Diet and Weight Loss System That Will Change Your Life in 88 Days. What do you think of what you'd heard so far? Are you motivated by what Charles has said? We'd love to hear from you. Give us a buzz at 382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can also send us an email at talk@stlpublicradio.org. Send us a tweet at STLOnAir. Or if you'd prefer, you can reach us also through Facebook. Back with more questions and hopefully your calls with Charles D'Angelo. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU. Hello again and welcome back to our conversation with Charles D'Angelo, author of Think and Grow Thin, The Revolutionary Diet and Weight Loss System That Will Change Your Life in 88 Days. We have him now. You're going to have to wait a couple of weeks before the book is out. I have an unedited galley version of it here. It's a very handsome book and just chock full of information, Charles. You've got to be very, very proud of
I'm
that.
Extremely excited. You know, what caused me to write the book down was, as I said a bit earlier, I was overwhelmed with the amount of people who want my help. And people say that it's my story, it's that I've been there, that they can relate to me. It makes a difference. So I put everything I know into that book, step by step, so people can follow it on their own.
You know, you've got a little blurb from Bill Clinton. We've been talking about Claire McCaskill, lost 50 pounds. You've got acknowledgments of Steven Spielberg and J.K. Rowling. I mean, you've got all sorts of celebrity people here. You're a local guy from St. Louis. How did you get all these people behind you?
Well, I was very, very, very privileged. I've always admired President Clinton. His foundation and he do so much work to combat childhood obesity. So I had the opportunity to share a copy of my manuscript with him. Several of my clients are friends of his. He's witnessed their personal success working with me. He was kind enough to review the manuscript, and considering how much he wants to help combat the childhood obesity epidemic and my story of being an overweight teen that struggled with it and that has overcome it and literally transformed my life and the lives of thousands, he was generous enough to give that kind endorsement on the cover of my book.
Well, what did Steven Spielberg do for you?
Steven Spielberg didn't do anything for me. J.K. Rowling didn't do anything for me. I put them in my dedication. Both of those people really have served as inspirations to me in my own personal life. Both have really taken the leap, as we were discussing. They did things at the forefront of their individual industries. They took risks. Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. They believed in themselves. They put themselves out there. J.K. Rowling was living in poverty for quite some time, and look at the genius that we've discovered in her in the Harry Potter series. I was so privileged to have had the chance to meet Dan Radcliffe recently in New York City, and you talk about an authentic, really caring, loving man. I mean, just a young man, 22 years old, a little bit younger than me, but a person that really just accepts who he is and accepts everyone for who they are, and I think that's something that's been missing in a lot of cases.
How old are you?
I'm 26.
Boy, you've come a long way in a very short period. Before I go to the phones, very quickly, when you made this transition as a 160-pound overweight teenager, you said you were eating pizzas, which now, by the way, has been declared a vegetable by our U.S. Congress. I'm sure you'll be happy to know that. But you had eaten an entire pizza. The transition, was it rabbit food? Did you was it a quick transition or
It was
gradual?
very, very quick. What I decided to do was I decided to set up a structure, taking everything that I could learn from any source that was willing to provide it, whether it be books, whether it be people at the gym. I went and I joined a fitness center. I gleaned as much information as I could from people that were in shape my own age, people that were older, people that were willing to point me in the right direction. And I was very, very blessed to come upon people that were willing to give me information to help me along. But what I found was there was no structure. There was something missing. It was, well, you could do this, or this. So there was no real concrete, here's what to do. So what I decided to do was take it upon myself to really pick out what would work for me. So for breakfast, for example, I would have maybe oatmeal and a scoop of whey protein because guys at the gym would do that. For snacks, I would have something like an ounce of almonds. For lunch, I would go to Subway. Okay, and I chose things that were healthy, nutritive, and quite rapidly I started dropping weight. And I was just walking on the treadmill 30 minutes a day. And I increased that. As if my weight loss slowed down, I would increase that a little bit until I worked my way all the way up to an hour. And I tracked all of this. And I synthesized all that into a system that worked. And I found, well, the diet is one part, isn't it? And the cardio is another. And so is resistance training. After I lost the 160 pounds, I got into building my body back up and putting on quite a bit of muscle tissue. So I started lifting weights and becoming passionate about that. And I applied that same mindset. That is, I applied the discipline of keeping with the structure, being disciplined, being committed to a goal, and really deciding what my goals were. And I think that's another thing that people need to focus on is you need to really have in your mind where you want to be. And you can't think of yourself as a fat person. So many people come to me and their identity is that of a fat person. I say, you're not a fat person. You have so much success in other facets. Look at the people that come to work with me. These are people that are leaders of industry, captains of industry. They're people that are great fathers, great mothers, great spouses. They have success. They just forget sometimes to do what they know.
You're a thin person hiding in a fat body.
I believe that I always say to a person, if let's say they're 300 pounds, they're really supposed to be 150. I say you're 150 pounds, you're carrying around 150 pounds of fat. And all we have to do is shed that. Okay, but you can't think of it as you're a 300-pound person because you're going to be fighting yourself. There's nothing to fight. Just be.
Yeah. It took you 2 years to lose 160 pounds.
That's correct.
Right? Wow. 80 pounds a year. Let's go to the phones, and we'll begin with Bill calling from St. Louis. Bill, thanks for waiting. You're on the air with Charles D'Angelo.
Yes, Charles, you seem like an awfully nice guy, and I'm happy for your success. But I have a question. I heard you on another show once recommend potatoes. And from everything I've read, other than sweet potatoes, they're filled with simple sugars, very high glycemic, which messes with your blood sugar. And that seems like sort of a rookie mistake, and I was wondering if you'd like the opportunity to clear that up.
Well, any complex carbs I find are fine. And if a person chooses to have a baked potato and they're not loading it with all sorts of non-nutritive foods, I haven't found that to be problematic in that case. There are a variety of choices a person can make. Sweet potatoes, as you mentioned, are excellent. So are yams. Any complex carbs. There are some that are better than others. It just depends on what a person has been doing as contrasted to what I have them do. And sometimes it's a step down. So sometimes, as Don referenced earlier, you don't go from eating pizza to rabbit food. Gradually, for some people, I don't know what interviewer you're referencing, but nonetheless, some people require that it be a little bit more step down.
Do you calorie count?
I do not, no.
Yeah.
The
that's
system I
not
developed,
part of your system.
No, I don't require clients to record their foods because that's not what I'm doing. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. That's not what I'm working with. What I'm working with is a person's mindset. And a baked potato is a hell of a lot healthier than pizza or something like that. So,
well, what about the so-called comfort foods? I mean, sometimes we all need that.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that.
The heck with you.
But I will tell you this. I do build into my program what's called a refuel night. And that's an evening where a person can choose a meal of healthy carbohydrates. And, for example, perhaps that's what that gentleman was referencing in the sense that on that night, I want people to have, you may call them comfort foods. I call them more refueling foods, foods that are going to give the body more energy. Things are going to break down to sugar, so the muscle tissue sucks that up, and they have more energy for the following week of fat loss. So one night a week, they do get to have those things, but I always encourage people never to take in trigger foods, foods that they find are going to lead them into that endless loop of having things they know they shouldn't have.
The chocolate, you get into what
dessert
eating frenzy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, for some people, one taste, they can't stop.
Well, you mentioned sugar, and insulin is being looked at these days as being a contributing factor, or that whole process
Sure.
of weight gain. Let me ask you about that, and at the same time ask you about medical supervision for any of the things that you're suggesting
Absolutely.
here.
Yeah. The issue is when a person comes to see me, I always advise them to have talked to a physician before starting any physical fitness program, whether it be a nutritional program or a food program or an exercise program, because I'm not a doctor. I've never seen any negative health consequence arise from any of my work, only positive, in fact, and many of my clients being physicians themselves. So what I'm proposing people do is a very balanced, healthy, nutritive system. The only real difference is it's very, very structured in that you're not choosing different foods each day for 2 weeks. You choose one set of foods so that you allow your mind to disconnect from food. And then as you disconnect over time, you find that those foods don't mean what they used to mean to you. And you find that when you do have those refuel nights, you're not eating as much non-nutritive food as you once did. In other words, you find if you do indulge in those foods, you feel so tired the next day. You feel so really just groggy sick that you choose a much more energizing food.
Let's go back to the phones.
Sure.
We have many people want to talk to Charles D'Angelo. Let's bring in John calling from St. Louis. Go ahead, John. You're on the air.
Yes, hi. What do you think about the practice of the martial arts, karate, tai chi? It's my understanding that in tai chi, those slow, continuous moves stimulate the endocrine system, promoting weight loss, and also the cardiovascular system is also stimulated.
I think is it John? Yeah, John. I think any activity like that is not only good for the body, but it goes back to the mind. I think that learning how to calm your mind and not let things, which a lot of the martial arts practices teach, is learning how to control your mindset. And even with that empowering knowledge that you have, you know how to master yourself and to be in control of yourself. So I think it parallels what I do in a lot of ways in the sense that it teaches you how to calm yourself. It teaches you how to think before acting, which I think not only is helpful from a physiological standpoint, but also from a mental standpoint. So I'm all for it.
Thanks for the call, John. Let's bring in Charles from Florissant. Charles, thanks for being with us. You're on the air.
You may not be the person to ask. You said you're not a doctor, but I've just been curious for a while, this connection between diabetes and hypertension. Maybe you know something about that.
Well, I'll tell you this. I would say 85, 90% of the folks that come to see me have such comorbidities. And what I have seen is their doctors, after them partaking in my program, have been able to eliminate much of those prescription drugs. Oftentimes, you find a person with obesity not only struggles with diabetes, hypertension, but one that I'm seeing more and more now is sleep apnea. And you want to talk about a destructive, devastating illness because literally your body's robbed of oxygen while you're sleeping. So obesity has so many health ramifications. And what I'm saying is if you just make the decision to take control of what you're putting in your body, you can see such marked improvement in your overall health, not to mention your confidence, not to mention your energy, not to mention the fire in your personal relationships and how confident you are in your business. So much can be improved upon. And health is certainly one of the primary things that you'll see improvement in right away.
Thanks for the call, Charles. Ann in Richmond Heights, go ahead. You're on the air with Charles D'Angelo.
Hello there. I'm on a mission to make St. Louis the healthiest city in the world. And I believe we have the potential for becoming that if we can help our children and get to schools and hospitals, which have the absolute most horrible food. And our children, it's tough. We're kind of a pizza city, a fried ravioli city. And I'd like to know where I can meet you. I would like to. You're a treasure for St. Louis.
Well, that's so sweet of you. That is so kind of you. If you want to reach me, the easiest way is just to go to www.charlesdangelo. That's CharlesDangelo.com. Or you can go to Amazon and type in my name, or type in Think and Grow Thin, and you can find all of my information there.
Oh, great. Well, for me personally, when I saw John Robbins' Diet for a New America in a DVD, it helped me to finally take control of my addiction to meat and fried foods.
Well, congratulations. How much weight have you lost?
Oh, it wasn't as much as weight. It was like being healthy. I was like an 80-year-old woman at 25.
Oh, wow.
And I just, the pain went away, and I started having energy and feeling great.
Isn't it amazing how much what you're putting in your body has an impact?
Oh, it is shocking. And I want to help the children. Please help me to what we can do to help the children.
Well, if you can do anything to help promote the book, there's a huge amount of information as far as what I went through as a child, and really directly reaching out to those that are younger that are struggling with it. I mean, with the bullying epidemic our nation's now facing is something we all need to address and really put focus on. So I'm glad to see that you're really working towards it, and I appreciate you asking for my help.
And
well, I'm so excited about your book. Where's your office?
My office, I have several. The one here in St. Louis is off of Watson. So if you go on my website, you can find all that information, or just email me,
great.
either one.
and thank you.
No problem.
St. Louis treasure.
Thank you, dear.
And thank you for the call. And by the way, we have a link to Charles' website on our website, stlpublicradio.org. I have a phone number here that I'll give you now and give it later, but sometimes it's difficult to take down phone numbers. That's on our website as well. 314-495-3228.
That will come straight to me, Don.
Okay, well, that's the guy they'll be trying to reach, I'm sure. Charles D'Angelo. Again, all that information is on our website. You know, she brought up, as you did earlier, the issue of childhood obesity.
Yeah.
You were, of which you were one, an obese child. What about that in terms of what you're proposing? Young people getting into this, and also older people. Is one size fit all in your strategy?
I wouldn't say one size fits all in the sense that whatever food choices a person choose may vary from person to person. What I would say is I find that for some, as they age, they find that their pattern has been reinforced and reinforced and reinforced year after year. So interrupting that, breaking that pattern can be a bit more difficult than for a person that's 12, 13, 14 years old that's just getting into bad habits. So I can see the idea that as you're older, some find it a bit more difficult to make the change. But I think that the leverage that one has in their older years is a lot higher. In other words, they see the implication on their health. As a youth, it's difficult sometimes to see what's coming if you continue in your ways. As you get a little older, you're a little bit more wise, and you have a lot of social proof from seeing those that are close to you in your peer group that have suffered from their habits and maybe have lost a limb to diabetes or maybe have had a heart attack. I had a gentleman that came in to see me, a client. He's been a client for several years and has maintained a 70-pound loss. And his best friend had gastric bypass surgery. And my client said instead of eating a bag of candy at a time, he was eating a baggie of candy at a time, just eating less of the wrong food. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to fix the issue. Again, something's been missing in everything that's out there. And if you come at it, well, you know, what diet is the best? Look, there's no lack of healthy food programs out there. Mine is very, very balanced, very healthy. But the one thing is it's very strict in that a person has to make the decision to be accountable and to be consistent.
You have a lot of very tasty-looking recipes in your book, by the way. I did have a chance to look at some of those. They looked delicious.
Well, thank you.
And good for you, too. Boy, that's wonderful. Charles D'Angelo is our guest. We have to take another break. We'll do that. We have some lines open. Like to get you and the audience back into the conversation. 382-8255 is the number. That's 382-TALK. What are your food weaknesses? And can Charles help you, do you think? And why do you think you're overweight, if you are? Come on in. 382-8255 is the number. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU. Hello again, and welcome back to our conversation with Charles D'Angelo. We're talking about his weight loss strategy and his book, which will be out in the middle of January, called Think and Grow Thin. We have an email from Mark here, Charles, and he asks, have you ever worked with people who have weight problems due to having a hereditary thyroid disease? How difficult does this disease make a successful weight loss, considering the slowed metabolism in the hypo stage and low energy levels?
Excellent question. This goes back down to when I work with a person, always asking them to have their physician look at them prior and during while work with me, because hormone levels and everything can have an impact. I have not found that such an issue stops a person's weight loss, but I have found it to make it very, 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 very slow. Now, there's an easy way to remedy that, and that is go to your physician, have your blood test run, or go to your endocrinologist, and they can often prescribe a medication to get your levels normal so that when you are embarking on a healthy eating journey and an exercise routine, that you're at your optimum, so you really are as healthy as possible. Another issue that many of my male clients deal with, and I'll get into the female here in a moment, is testosterone issues later in life. Oftentimes, obesity can cause all of your hormones to be out of whack. So it's really a great idea before embarking on any journey to go to your doctor, utilize them as a great resource. Get your blood test ran, get a real idea of where you are. And not only with the hormones, if you're a male with your testosterone levels, if you're a female with your estrogen, your progesterone levels, look at where you are, but most importantly, look at your cholesterol levels, look at where your A1C is, that is your blood sugar average, look at where all those things are so that you have a indicator when you're starting, and it's only another thing that you can look at after 3 months or so of being on a program and seeing how far those have improved, because the number isn't the only thing you want to look at. So many people come at this looking at how much weight am I going to lose or how fast should I lose it, as he alluded to. Don't look at it just like that. Look at it as I want to get my health to where it should be and lose weight as a byproduct.
Yeah, there could be a danger that someone who is grossly overweight starting a vigorous exercise program, it could do themselves more harm than good.
You know, if you take any extreme measures, that is, if you starve yourself or do way too much exercise, again, if you disturb that balance, it can be very, very, very dangerous. So the key is taking a very balanced approach. And as I talked about in my book, it's very, very, very straightforward. I have a program in there for losing 50 pounds or more. So that is, if a person needs to lose 200 pounds, they take that route. If a person wants to lose 50 pounds or less, and it's a 12-week program, and I talk about what to do after the 12 weeks, and then once a person reaches the maintenance level, how to integrate all the variety they want so that they can keep themselves at that outcome that they've achieved.
That is the key, is to maintain
I believe
it and sustain it. Let's take a call from Mike. He has a question that I think should be fairly interesting. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael, and I'm scheduled for gastric bypass surgery after the first of the year. I weigh 380 pounds, although I've been a vegetarian and vegan since 1980. I think carbohydrates and starchy foods have been my, have wreaked havoc on my body. So I know more important than the surgery, maintaining a new lifestyle with the new stomach will be important. So I'd like some recommendations from Charles. And
Well, with any situation like that where you're really thinking about having a big procedure, I'd say this, Michael, I'm not trying to talk you out of the surgery. I think if you believe that's the way to go, then you need to do what you believe is right for you. But what I would say is this. I've had people that are far bigger than you that have taken the program that I prescribe and made it work for themselves, whether they're a vegetarian or vegan or whatever they may be, whatever their food habits may be. Because much of your issue, if you weigh nearly 400 pounds, is how you're thinking about food. And it goes directly to the point that I made a bit earlier about eating less of the wrong food when you can't eat as much physically. Is it necessary? I don't believe at all is healthy. I think you need to learn how to look at food in the right way. And I hope that whatever center you're going to for that procedure will offer the psychological support that you'll need after having the procedure and throughout, and also a good nutritional education course. If you're looking to take an alternate and you'd like to try my program before doing that and put that off and then come back to Don and tell him how you're 180 pounds lighter and that you didn't have the procedure, I'd be happy to help you. You can go to the website and reach out to me.
There are people who feel that they were born to be fat. Is it your case? Your mother and father are both overweight.
My father.
Your father overweight, and feeling that it's hereditary. I'm going to be fat.
Yeah, my genetics are predisposing me to being fat, and I just don't buy it. It's like saying I was born to be poor because you were born into a family in poverty. You can make your life whatever you choose it to be. And you can either take a positive outlook on life or you can take a negative. And you can decide to take the actions that are going to lead to the outcomes you want, but you have to decide what those outcomes are. And if you look at yourself as, well, I'm out of control and there's no way of changing, then you're going to behave in a congruent manner. You need to look at this as, look, for a period of time, I've let circumstances dictate my life rather than controlling my life. And I'm taking control of my life now. I'm going to decide where I want to be 3 months from now, where I want to be 6 months from now, where I want to be a year from now. And I'm going to find out, I'm going to seek out the resources, seek out the mentors, seek out the information, tap into higher power. I believe in God. By no means is my program a sectarian program, but I believe that having a higher power is very, very helpful considering so much has to do with the mind, and I'm a spiritual person. So I think that when you get all those things in alignment, when you get a healthy program in place, healthy food program, a healthy exercise program, and most importantly, that you learn how to manage your own mindset, that you're unstoppable, and you can apply that discipline to anything you want to achieve in life.
Back to the phones, and let's bring in Brian. He's been very patiently waiting, so we'll take his call now. Brian, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi there. Wonderful topic. Appreciate you taking the call. I actually am a physician, and I actually deal in nephrology, so I see kind of the end stages of what now is trending towards an obesity epidemic and some of the personal and problems with America in general and healthcare and the downfall that I think the ramification is going to cost personal in America. So two questions kind of in this is, where, from your perspective, where do you think we're headed as far as the medical system? I think a lot of patients and doctors in general, I hear many different opinions about how to approach this and how to get reimbursed and appropriate management, because some of the recommendations you're talking about, lifestyle and doing the right things, are the hard road. And some patients really want to hear an easy solution, and I worry about some of the medications that are along the lines of stimulants and uppers, and some of the long-term repercussions on cardiovascular and hypertension complications, and the need to forego all else, because if we don't get the obesity controlled, well, then the other issues aren't going to matter.
I hear you.
Yep. And then where do you think the system as a whole, and I think, some of these things about responsibility for both patients and doctors, but like you said, responsibility for building into these healthcare systems that we're hearing more about politically, for patient responsibility and building into that some sort of carrots and sticks.
Like incentives and things, you mean?
Well, incentives for both doctors and patients,
sure.
Because there's a lot of talk about, well, it becomes a doctor responsibility, and then you can almost see people saying, well, we're going to watch this, and if you have an overweight population, you're not improving that, you're failing, and we're going to,
I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment. I understand exactly where you're coming from. What's your name again?
Brian.
Hey, Brian, are you a doctor here in St. Louis?
Uh-huh.
You might know the gentleman that wrote the foreword for my book. He's a nephrologist. His name is Dr. Marcos Rothstein. Do you know Marcos?
Absolutely. Wonderful. That's up to watch you. Absolutely.
Yeah, Marcos is a nephrologist, and he wrote the foreword for my book. So I'm quite familiar with the issues you're addressing. Now, here's the thing that I would think would help you is, as a helping professional, you spend your life just like I do, trying to improve the lives of others. And oftentimes it's easy for that boundary to become blurred. And you care about your patients. I mean, you spent years in medical school and your entire adult life developing yourself to be able to service others. But I think there is a clear boundary where the person, the adult that is, for children it's a bit different, but for the adults that probably are the majority of your patients, I think that the boundary is quite clear. You present to them exactly what you believe is the best approach. And at that point, considering the wealth of information that's available on the internet, and I'm sure many of your patients come in and they have an agenda on their own, and they've printed things off of WebMD and everything else when they come to see you, that they have an idea of what's wrong with them before you even open your mouth. I think that once you present what you know and you believe to be truth and what you know is the best for that person, that it's then upon that person to take responsibility. When a person comes to me, oftentimes, as I said earlier in our conversation, they say, "What can you do for me?" And that is the wrong approach. And if you get caught in that trap, because psychologically people want to externalize responsibility because it's painful. They have to realize that, number one, that they're a product of their own habits and that they are where they are because of what they've done consistently. And I'll tell you, I get some violent reactions from people when they come to my office and I present it that way. They don't want to hear that because what they've been eating and what they've chosen or not chosen to do has gotten them in the place they're at. And there's eloquent ways of saying it, but sometimes when a person is at the place in their life where their life is in the balance, you have to be a bit direct. And I think that is the most important thing that you can do for a person. And if you don't have the information as far as what's the best idea for a food program or exercise program, then steer them in the direction that you believe would be most appropriate. In answer to your other question about the political system, I don't spend enough time studying it to really give you what I would believe would be a good answer to that. I believe that it's very, very complicated. I believe that our legislators are the ones that are going to be making much of the decisions in that context, and 98% of my time spent with clients. So, to be honest, I don't even know what day it is.
Oh, yes, you do. Time is starting to get away from us. I want to get at least a couple more calls in, so let's bring in Michael calling from St. Louis. Michael, thank you for waiting. You're on the air.
Hello, yes.
Go ahead, please.
Hey, Michael.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, I would just wanted to really say that I support everything Mr. D'Angelo is speaking about, and also the lifestyle. I realize that it's really hard to even take this kind of lifestyle and shop for it and cook for it and all that kind of thing. And there's not really very many options as far as fast food goes. I personally have a program called the Green Dining Alliance, and that's what we're trying to do, is bring options for people who are on the road and make it easier for them to really get a hold of this lifestyle and basically live with it, because it is such a hard thing to really transform yourself to do.
Sure, I agree with you, and I think convenience is oftentimes one of the contributory factors to a person becoming overweight, is that they make whatever they want to eat, the most convenient thing. And oftentimes, convenient also implicates it being cheap, and cheap can mean not nourishing. So it's a vicious cycle once a person starts to eat out of convenience. So the key is to plan ahead so that you have a structure in place. And in my book, that's what I talk about, is having a plan every day, what to eat, when to eat, so that you have all your food ready, you have it all together. And if you want to use a service such as yours, great. If you want to get at a restaurant, great. But you need to make sure that the choices you're making are available to you, and they're things that are easy, that are accessible to you, and that you enjoy the taste of.
If you're on the road a lot, it's tough.
You mentioned some of the clients I've worked with that are politicians, but they've all made it a priority. There is no reason you can't make it a priority. It may be more challenging, considering that you're up in the air and in transit from car to car or whatever the case may be. But the reality is, if you have a plan ahead of time, there is no reason you should fail. And always have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. Have backup plans. And in the book, that's what I give. I give an exact way to develop, to put in place a plan so that no matter where you are, what time of day it is, you're not hungry, and you have the food you need.
All right. Let's bring in Kathy calling from St. Louis. Kathy, go ahead, please.
Hey, Charles. I just wanted to ask you, I've been reading your books and your information, and do you think you can help anybody? I feel so far gone and don't even know where to begin. Do you think anybody is too far gone for your program?
Absolutely not. And you're the type of person my book was written for, because the fact is that no matter how big you are right now or how many times you've tried and failed, if you're ready to put yourself out there again, if you're ready to really give it your all, there is no reason you can't achieve what you're after. There are many people that will tell you that that's not the case, and in fact, you might believe to the contrary. But I'm telling you, if you just put yourself out there, just go at it one last time, get the book or come see me or whatever you need to do, and get the program in place. Start to be consistent with it. Develop an exercise routine you can be in a pattern of, so that every day you're going to the gym or you buy a treadmill for the house and start walking 30 minutes every day. And sooner than you know it, the results will start to reinforce the habits. You'll start to feel so much better, your energy will be better, and all of a sudden you'll be into this new way of living, and you'll start to believe that you are capable because you're seeing the results of your actions.
We have 2 minutes left,
Sure.
and just to put a cap on this thing, Charles, let me give you a hypothetical and tell me how you would handle it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 100 pounds overweight. I want to lose it, and I'm somewhat impatient. I come to you. How do you begin with me?
Number one, I sit down and I ask you, why do you need to lose the weight? The most important thing, I believe, one of the most important things I should say, is knowing why you need to lose the weight. So many people want to lose the weight, but it's for a vanity or it's for something that's superficial. You have to have really deep reasons, because the reality is, to lose 100 pounds, it is challenging. And once you develop the reasons of why you need to do it, I say, then you need to look at the results. What is it you want to achieve? So you look at the results, the reason that you're going after it, and then the road you're going to take. So those three things are what I go over with a person, the three R's.
So it's a consult. When I come to you,
it's strictly consulting. I'm not training anybody. I'm not a personal trainer. I'm a weight loss coach. So what I help a person do is I put in place the program that I've developed that's helped now literally 2001, me being the one, people to transform their lives by putting in an exercise program, cardiovascular at first, just walking, a healthy eating pattern, and most importantly, helping them learn to manage their mindset. And that's not something that you can just plug into a wall and do. It's something that comes over time, and it comes with work and conditioning. It doesn't happen overnight. You just make the decision. You have to go through things, and you come to experience the change.
And then I would come back to you?
Every 2 weeks for 3 months. So when a person sees me privately, and in the book, I do it the same way. I lay the plan out exactly as I would if you were a client of mine. So I go through everything. Here's how you design your goals. Here's how you find the reasons why you need to change. And thirdly, here's a road you're going to take. And then you follow it. You do the 2-week program. At the end of 2 weeks, you come back to the book. You make the changes that I proposed in the book. You go another 2 weeks, et cetera, until you reach your goal.
That is Charles D'Angelo. And the book he's talking about, yet to be released, it will be in the middle of January, Think and Grow Thin, the revolutionary diet and weight loss system that will change your life in 88 days. Charles is local, and we have his contact information on our website at stlpublicradio.org. Charles, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Don. It's been an honor.
It's been a great conversation, and I think you're going to help a lot of people.
Well, thank you so
much. You
much.
already have, obviously, but thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Tomorrow on St. Louis on the Air, Dr. John Hagler, director of the Missouri Department of Agriculture. It's a complex department. We'll talk with him about agricultural policy, consumer protection, the environment, etc. Archive versions of past St. Louis on the Air programs available for download or podcast at stlpublicradio.org. Funding for the production of the program comes in part from the generous support of Maryville University. St. Louis on the Air, production of St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU. Thank you for listening. I'm Don Marsh. 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 I'm Don Marsh.